Hello?
Okay, perfect.
Hello, there we go. Okay, yay. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Yay. All right. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk about industry-specific use cases. And for this part, we definitely want it to be really interactive. So jump in with questions, clarifications, contributions around what folks are building. From the folks joining us for this session who are hands deep in something, who is kind of in the sandbox with an application they're excited about? Anybody? All right, is anyone at the planning stage for an application they're excited about? Okay, that's okay. That's what today's for. We're here to help. So much of the, I think, power of these kinds of afternoons is really helping share with folks what other people are doing. And we pulled really just a selection based on who's here today: wealth management, insurance, and healthcare. And you can see healthcare, we actually did a deep dive into use cases across kind of 4 different areas. I want to really kick off with the point that what somebody else in insurance is doing, if you are a retail bank, is actually not going to be that relevant. This is a really broad industry. It's emerging, and so everything is going to feel like it might look the same. But if AI is electricity, we can't compare stadium lighting to a flashlight. And a lot of what is happening right now is still very early days, and it can be confusing. So especially at dinner tonight, we want to make sure that folks are with groups that look like them, so that we can really ideate and help move the ball forward for folks who haven't started experimenting yet. In wealth management, anybody in the room in wealth management or serving the wealth management industry? Okay, awesome. And what organizations are you all with?
Well, I drove one of the major transformations for UPS, the business cycle transformation for UPS.
Cool. Nice. And what about?
City on the design side.
On the science side?
Design.
Matt, you also? Oh, you're with me? Okay, cool.
So, you've got a little bit of that.
A little bit of that.
Obviously, primarily insurance and group benefits.
Okay.
Solutions.
Okay, perfect.
Not a lot that you don't.
No, not a lot that you don't do. Yeah, totally. In financial services, a lot of generative AI applications in corporate functions can be, pretty similar between subsectors. So IR, HR, comms, we tend to be doing some of the same things, and so generative AI applications are different. In digital marketing across wealth management and insurance and retail banking, the way that you acquire a customer might be pretty different, but especially if there's a B2B component, that digital journey is pretty widely applicable. And so a lot of the generative AI use cases in marketing also are broadly similar across financial services sectors. But the heart of a sales and kind of operation group, what we are doing with generative AI is very different, at a bank, whether investment or retail, and an insurance company. So, in wealth management, in the sales function, there are really exciting applications that we've gotten to be a part of around being able to really communicate with clients in a personalized, highly insightful way while introducing a lot of automation. So we can talk about those use cases. On the research side of things, we've been involved in building applications on Writer where folks are really taking a unique and scalable approach to how insights can be surfaced. So it's not just automating a current workflow, but it's imagining new things that can be delivered, and we'll talk about that. In insurance, within kind of underwriting and claims management, there is a lot of productivity for all of the parts that, aren't going through models already. And in insurance, we've seen a lot of policy comparison types of use cases for both, the underwriters as well as the folks doing claims management. And then lots and lots of communication drafting based on what those policies are and the specifics of any particular claim. In insurance, support tends to be another really high generative AI use case rich area, and there the architecture of what a solution might look like a telco example. We're going to go through a telco example in a bit, but certainly, what you are drawing from and what you are saying are really different. And once folks are hands-on with Writer, just to kind of put a pin in what Kevin was saying, we're a platform that allows companies to very quickly build generative AI applications. Once folks understand, how hard it is to build a general digital assistant for support, for example, that can do more than one thing very well, people understand why it's important to have a platform that allows you to quickly iterate on different assistants. And within insurance specifically, we definitely have found that agents that support the support people and agents that support folks on the top end of that funnel, whether they're selling a policy or underwriting a policy or supporting one, those all need to be customized with different. Yep.
In the evaluation against compliance risk in the insurance vertical, when you say risk, that's financial risk, or is it risk of not being in compliance, meaning it's looking at an output from regulatory agencies and then evaluating that body of knowledge and applying it internally?
It's mostly the latter. Yep, exactly. And who are you with? Just so we get a sense of.
Proficient.
You're proficient. Okay, awesome.
I'm mainly a healthcare guy, I think.
Okay, nice.
So that applies towards any highly regulated industry.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
You have a team of subject matter experts that are essentially constantly diving through really confusing regulatory material, and how you can simplify extracting relevant information.
Yeah, exactly. And it's big. Yeah, one of the underbellies of being more efficient is you've just bottlenecked all your compliance people. Right, so if you are United Healthcare and UHG Global is now able to do a lot more kind of real-time marketing than they were able to before, well, and you heard Kevin mention this use case earlier, that kind of 8-week SLA for a legal review, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, now it's a lot more painful, right? Because you've got more that you want to push through the funnel. And so, and this is where, folks like Proficient come in, really being able to think about, when this use case gets scaled up, where else are we going to be creating bottlenecks? And hey, how do we use AI to actually solve those bottlenecks too? It's really powerful. Okay, let's go into some kind of exploration of use cases really specifically. The first couple are ones where there isn't UI in Writer, and then the others are UI, and we'll go into the product. This is a unnamed telco for now, but one of the major telecom providers in the U.S., folks that serve our phones, et cetera. And they were able to really use a lot of the Writer stack to support agents. And execs, and maybe this is like a Gartner or Forrester thing that they've been pushing, are kind of weirdly obsessed with this next best action digital assistant idea. And the next best action is going to come from the agent because they are the next best action. And where state of the art truly is, even when you've been able to build something really sophisticated, is helping them speed up the looking through a knowledge base, the being able to summarize everything that's important about a client or a user that is dialed in, and use that in support of their being able to deliver the next best action, and turn quick notes on the next best action into prose and a more detailed explanation that's user-friendly, easy to read, et cetera. So it's been funny kind of coming into organizations where they've done kind of like a big strategy thing, and next best action for an agent is like the top thing. And we help them really see that like the technology isn't there. That agent is not going to be happy being told what to do when like they know much more than the bot. And so, again, back to kind of the lessons from the beginning of like really interviewing and understanding the workflow of those folks. It's so important because then you'll be able to build an LLM-based solution that is going to be intelligently summarizing what truly accelerates somebody's workflow. This is a investment bank use case, a major investment, U.S. investment bank, and here, and I think in a lot of the investment banking and financial services, kind of high-end sales organizations. So these are senior bankers in this example, but the ability to really help them quickly get an insight that they can use to advance a relationship is an emerging kind of rich area for generative AI use cases. And in this example, this is pretty sophisticated. The customer wanted to be able to give senior bankers conversation starters that were like truly, potentially one of the most insightful thing that a CEO would have received from their senior banker, that week or that month. And so this is a really fun example of our being able to, combine and, within the writer architecture, some of this stuff goes in at knowledge graph, some of it goes in at the use case level, some of it will go in the prompt. But we're able to put together insights from, let's say, the category of conversation starter is potential acquisition targets, diving into earnings call transcripts. So what happened there that might really rise to the occasion of actually getting put into an email and sent over to a client. And that job has normally been kind of the remit of an army of junior bankers, where this kind of thing actually falls pretty low on their radar, unless the senior banker is like, hey, got a client who was looking at this type of acquisition. Can you look at competitor X, competitor Y, and see how they did in the quarter? So really being able to automate that and scale that is really interesting. And this is something that folks are kind of at the level one of transformational, not incremental. These are the types of things that really rise to that level. Another example from healthcare that we really like, this is a health retail company, one of the largest in the US, a great customer. And one of the things that they have always struggled with, just operationally, is you get a prescription and there's that like stuff you never read at the front stapled to it. And there's actually like federal regulations around like how that is written and the grade level it's written at and what kind of information should be in there, et cetera. And so they built an app in Writer where they're able to put in, the drug that's been prescribed, any special health considerations that we need to know, the age of the patient, and then they're automatically getting instructions, interaction effects where there are some, common side effects, and how to take. And both the input and the output is pretty highly customized. This is something that, from when they conceive of the idea to when we are able to ship them an interface like this with an API endpoint, building off of a full stack platform, this is a couple of days of work, right? Really different than kind of the weeks or months that they had really been kind of anticipating based on their initial, right, exploration of what's possible.
Have you guys seen any use cases like this show up sort of on the rendering care side? Things like things that you need to know before a procedure or home care instructions after discharge, things like that?
Yeah, so we do care instruction, kind of things to know before, or things that the packets that are delivered kind of when you arrive for a procedure. We are working on that with an Optum, so one of the kind of clinical operators within an Optum. So, you know, and especially in these large enterprises, you know, innovation isn't like this straight line. There'll be pockets that get really advanced, right, within kind of a big payer, for example. And then you kind of catch everybody else up on some of the more basic use cases. But that is something that we are seeing. And so, you know, for us, we think the big opportunity in the enterprise is, you know, always on generative AI, right? The ability to very quickly prototype, take into production use cases that end users actually use right away. That usage builds on itself and inspires other use cases. And some of the most impactful stuff comes bottoms up when somebody uses some other thing or sees some other group using it and goes, oh, wait, can I use Writer for this?
Yeah, but you can see where other data they can actually align to different stakeholders and help.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the challenge.
Right.
Getting all the stakeholders back together.
Yep. In another healthcare example that I think is interesting, this is it's a video because one of Kevin's peers can do a much better job than me explaining this example. So let me play that.
Review of the advisory board daily briefings custom template that we created for them. So the daily brief, in a quick summary, is every single day the advisory board team looks at news stories.
This is like the job of 400 people today. So a lot of people do this.
About medical news around the nation, picks a few that have similar themes, and then does a summary article talking about the main themes from a list of different sources. So you can see on the left here, we have a place where they can actually just throw in the URLs of the articles, or they can throw the full article in just as text. And then beneath those URLs, and you can have any number of URLs, beneath them, there is some optional content that you can help sort of guide what you want to see in the overall summarized article that gets created.
This is really important because the ability to embed a workflow embed an AI workflow into an existing workflow and actually have it be something that 400 people want to use and don't think is shit. This is the key here, is taking enough information from the end user that the juice is worth the squeeze at the end. And we abstract away all of the like coding and NLP and prompt engineering that you need, right, to be able to do this as an engineering team or as a technology team. And this makes all the difference in the quality being good, which, you know, is the prerequisite for like true adoption.
So a general summary, like this is the main point that we're talking about. And then you can have subheadings controlling what the different sections of the article are going to be. Having an introduction, talking about shortages putting patients at risk, and then the efforts to address these shortages. I'm going to hit generate content. So while this is generating content, these were sources that I pulled directly from a daily brief article. And you can see, you know, AP, The Hill, Fierce Pharma, CNN. It's a very broad selection of different sources. And depending on what you put down here, this is not necessary, but the structure of the advisory board articles has a general tone of wanting to be journalistic, wanting to be statistical in its analysis, wanting to pull quotes, right? So let's take a brief look at what got generated here. We have an introduction talking about the growing shortage of chemotherapy drugs, right? Identifying what the problem is. And then we're pulling out specific information. We're pulling out quotes from individuals, right? And it generates a 600-ish word article. And this allows the advisory board team to just pick the stories they care about, ask what they want the article to be about, and then they get this rough draft that is 80% of the way there for them. And then they can come in and layer in their writing expertise on top of this for a final draft that they're able to push out and save a bunch of time every single day.
What folks who are building things from scratch sometimes don't appreciate until you're kind of elbows into trying to build something that people like and want to use is the last mile of getting to the right quality. So for this example, I remember overhearing conversations around that journalistic tone. And, and these were all kind of news articles, but a lot of what folks are doing is putting in research papers and things from PubMed and like highly technical stuff. And, you say something good about a new therapeutic, for example, you got to go out there and also say something bad and find the person, the academic, who is going to criticize that same approach if you really want to nail a journalistic tone. And so really building that into the model and what the output is was really critical to us getting to that that level of quality where, those folks who are professionals say, okay, this is actually like really accelerating to my work, and I will use this. And this, the CEO there, Adele, is a huge fan. She's rolled this out across all sorts of use cases. But this use case came up bottoms up, actually. So a really good example of like transformational type of use case with kind of broad buy-in, and then what it looks like, how much work it really is to get to that kind of final quality bar. Yeah.
Weird. Oh, wow.
What are
And your name for everybody.
sorry, Richard. I'm a Sagittarius from Citi. Bias, right? So, how are you in this scenario? How are you caring for potential bias in one direction or the other for something like this for a patient?
For a patient.
Yeah, I mean, or just in general, right? Like making sure that it's a balance of the right content so that someone's sort of how we all self-diagnose. You go to your channels so it'll confirm what you're asking about diagnosis. And this is just related to a lot that we're thinking about now at Citi when it comes to bias in AI.
Yeah.
And that there has to be a level of bias so that there's a level of maybe empathy or decision making, but that razor's edge is something that I think a lot about.
You mean there needs to be a level of opinionated kind of point of view? Yeah. The thing about bias and generative AI is there's no silver bullet, and anybody who tries to sell that is just not being truthful. We approach it a number of different ways, and we are like at once, and we're pushing the envelope from a kind of foundation model research level to extend that even further. And this kind of big step one is don't ask the model to make stuff up. So we're going to do a sales enablement example shortly. If I am NVIDIA and I'm using Writer to enable my salespeople, and someone asks Writer what the top speed of their best-selling GPU is, and we don't actually have that information, we will make it up. Now, not in their actual instance, because we've done some things there, but if you go to writer.com and sign up, we will make stuff up. And so the knowledge graph completing an LLM, that idea is you want to be able to augment, whether it's at retrieval or in other techniques, the LLM with information that is actually relevant. To do that, you actually want to start with the use cases backwards, because sales enablement for folks who are selling their big kind of academic boxes, actually very different than, like NVIDIA retail gaming GPUs. And so what information do I need to have in there? And like we are starting to get to the level where people don't think that they can just dump a bunch of structured, unstructured data in a knowledge graph or a vector database and magically, the models are going to be so smart. It is really use case dependent, how you augment the model. So that's kind of like step one is use case backwards. What should be in the knowledge graph so that the common ways my people are going to be using these applications, I've got actual information in there. The second thing for us is this AI guardrails component. And that's actually not LLMs at all. That's NLP. So Kevin also mentioned, writing at a 4th grade reading level, and like a lot of healthcare and financial services have these plain language federal requirements. And you can't just say, oh, Palmyra, please, can you write at a 6th grade reading level? Like that doesn't work. And in healthcare, there's actually all sorts of exceptions where, there are really long, complicated medical terms that the government actually exempts from these grade level reading requirements, or else it would all be through the roof. So, all those things get actually built in as AI guardrails. And for us, AI guardrails is kind of an all-encompassing terms. It's like with absolute certainty, your people are not going to get a result that does A, B, C. And we're not leaving it up to an LLM where you change one word in the prompt and like you actually get a different answer. And there, on the bias front, we care a lot about gendered language. We care a lot about bias. And so those are literally things that you can turn on or off. Twitter, before it was decimated, actually, used Writer to enforce a rule as people were writing around gender-neutral pronouns, right? They really cared about that. So, the AI guardrails piece is important. That's kind of the second piece. The third piece is like you actually tell somebody when we might be hallucinating. So in Writer, there is a feature called claim detection. And if you are, let's take this example. All right, so there's nothing here that I need checked, but let's go to a different. So this is actually me using Writer. I wanted to listen to this podcast, but I didn't have time. And so I just put in, I forget what I put in, probably the link to the podcast. And I got all of my takeaways. And so I didn't really need to listen to it. This one also doesn't have any claims. Let's see. Oh, actually we did. Sorry, here we go. So, this is somebody else saying things, it's not me writing it, but, you can imagine here, Writer saying, this is a quote, I don't see this anywhere in your inputs, right, or your knowledge graph, please verify it. And so, when folks are writing statistics, when they're writing kind of conclusions, let's see if we've got... See if there's any here, none here. But you get the idea. We actually highlight for the actual person who is working in the product when something might be a claim that they need to verify because we don't know where it came from. And that is available as an API endpoint as well. So you could build that into other parts of the workflow. So those are kind of the big three things. Intuit is a big Writer customer, and this is maybe a fourth category of thing, just like training people, kind of the AI literacy part of like what to look for. And before using Writer, they make everybody take this like 10-minute test. And it's literally here's how you watch out for things that AI can get us on. And part of that test is like being able to look at look at like kind of two pieces of content and like start spotting, what might be AI generated and what kind of facts an AI product like could make up if it doesn't have it inside of a knowledge graph or if it's not in the custom template. Other questions on bias or hallucinations? Yeah. Yeah.
Or can it be just related content as my question?
So the neural writer models are not customer specific. And in fact, we don't have any customer data in there by design, right? We tie our hands on that. The use cases you build on top of the model are all, customer client data and content, and that never makes it into the foundation model. The model itself, we've got a medical version of that model, and that's what's live at a CVS, United Healthcare, et cetera. There's a financial services model that comes online end of this quarter that we're moving all our financial services customers to. We'll do an insurance version of that financial services model. And so, there's a whole kind of roadmap. This is tens of millions of dollars that go into just the foundation models. And our philosophy is smaller, more focused models are going to do a much better job than these gigantic models. And we just analyze content charts data. We don't produce code or images. So the models are much more focused. Now, somebody wanting to buy Palmyra and build on it and retrain it, we have open sourced a bunch of the families of models. I can share that with you later. So our 20 bill instruct model is going on Hugging Face, free and open source. So as our kind of most advanced models come online, we will put more of the simpler models on Hugging Face to be used for folks to do stuff like that. Thanks.
Are you developing these models, or are you using some libraries that are different models?
Yeah, they're built.
So the part is, these are all deep neural net models, the generative neural net models, which require a massive amount of data. So now if you go from customer A to customer B, the content is not the same. So if you look at the open AI aspect of it, it's basically grabbing data from generic sources, right? So essentially it has a very large amount of data which is applicable for everyone, as opposed to when you're making it more commercialized versions. The optimizer that goes underneath some of these models would require a massive amount of key, like the activation functions. So how do you manage to make sure that when it moves from, say, customer A to customer B, the data is adequate, the models are trained, and then you can use that output?
So cases are where we fine tune and customize, not the model itself. So we're not going to a city or a MetLife and actually retraining the foundation model on their data. Once you get into use case land, you actually need a lot less data than you think for some of these examples to be really good. At ExamWorks, it is a customer that basically does all of the high-end kind of claim adjudication in big $100,000 surgeries, et cetera. Our ability to create kind of custom analysis of looking at a claim, looking at the questions that the insurer has, then going into the medical file and pulling the relevant summaries. That was about 1,000 examples that we needed. Now, 1,000 examples by area, so disability separate from other things, but we're not talking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of examples or millions of words of data.
So you use case very specific.
Yeah.
Models with certain amount of data from this way, and you're replicating.
Yes, exactly. Rails are different by customer. And depending on what industry it's in, so at L'Oreal, for example, there are AI guardrails for all of L'Oreal and different AI guardrails by brand. And those apply regardless of the use case. Some AI guardrails apply only to specific use cases. So you want the whole thing to be really composable if what you're trying to do is build applications in days, not months. Other questions? Okay, cool. There is a use case around a corporate function, HR, that I think is really widely applicable. That would be fun to share. We've got a customer called Russell Reynolds that is an executive recruiter, and they are able to actually take inputs on their candidates that they are interviewing, and automatically create briefs that can go to the client. So this is a summarization of, it could be audio, it could be like the interview transcript, it's the JD, it is the spec of the role, and to kind of talk about the long pole in the tent here. This is a day and a half of 2,000 recruiters. This is what they are. This is what they're doing, is basically summarizing, and it's more than summarizing. This is the kind of the culmination, right, of a candidate search. And they had tried to do stuff like this with kind of APIs off the shelf, and it was just way too hard to get to the level of quality that you need to produce something that is good enough, right, to help those recruiters and not have them feel like their job has become, editing an AI bot, right? Which can be pretty demotivating for professionals. Another type of application that we build often is a sales enablement application, and especially in financial services. So your insurance, your wealth management, your kind of asset management, being able to train people both on like what kinds of questions do we get and how do we answer them, as well as like respond to clients in real time, is a big area for generative AI kind of augmentation. Ask Writer is our web application, but the same kind of outputs can be built into any other application via API. Yeah.
I'm curious, we financial services and insurance, these are very regulated
Yeah.
industries. How do you handle those responses, given the regulatory nature, to ensure, not only do you have policies, but you've got a lot of, jurisdiction, legislative, but you've got a lot of judgments that come over time and created approaches and responses. How does that?
Yeah. We're not in like the automated response.
Okay, more content.
So we will support insights, but we're supporting a human, right? Versus kind of automating the result. And yes, yeah, and that's really important. I think the only place where there are no humans in the loop at all in our business is in retail. And they're at a CVS or a L'Oreal across retail brands. What we're doing is kind of automating the top of funnel of a digital journey. So it's kind of automating landing page creation or automating, this is a fun use case from some of the L'Oreal brands, a summer color trend piece becomes a fall color trend piece, becomes a winter color trend piece. And, it's a lot of the same kind of cyclicality that gets built in. And so, those things and kind of skew editorial content doesn't need to be reviewed once they have A/B tested it against the human control. So, but yeah, I mean, in financial services and healthcare, there's literally nothing that we are doing today across 150 enterprise customers where there isn't an expert at the end of the line. Yeah.
If I may kind of follow up with Brian. But when you think about the full stack, though, if they did have those rules and regulations like an old school rules engine or something like that, could be a component of this with Writer sitting in there. Could it potentially be a data source to feed into, or would you rather have it be like a conjunction as part of the process that runs through the rules engine, make sure everything's copacetic, goes to Writer for the things that spit out, and maybe go back and test it again just to make sure and then go along the process?
Yeah, a lot of these rules engines are literally sitting on mainframes, and so people are like recreating them where we are pulling it in as an API. But that is basically the idea of what is happening, yeah.
Are you using the use cases? So if I've created this, am I then able to leverage it across multiple?
No, are you with Perficient? No. It's a question that we get from some partners, right? And for us, it's a real hard no. Because we actually put even different teams on it, you know. As much as every customer wants Kevin on their team, you know, we'll give them other people. So, you know, if you are Kenvue, you know, you're not that excited that we also work with CVS. Because if you come up with a, you know, SEO strategy, you want to make sure that like that is alpha that, you know, rolls to you and not everybody else. And everybody understands the architectural, like, you know, data segregation, like, or we wouldn't even be in those conversations if they didn't have a lot of trust in that. But it's simply just the know-how and the ideation, right? And, you know, for us, it's I think more cocktails maybe is the, yeah. Well, I forget what that was now. Ideation, oh yeah. We want to help folks really feel like the innovation we're helping foment in a company is the ability to create lots of different sources of competitive advantage with generative AI. And you know, not get stuck on any one thing being copied. Obviously, we want to make sure it's very important to our business that we're not the vector that, like, you know, you know, how something like that becomes shared or common knowledge. Obviously, we share use cases, but as you saw, like, it's literally one slide. We keep it real broad, and when we do design workshops, et cetera, like, you know, the likelihood that something that we did for somebody else becomes like the actual focal point of someone else's kind of big use case, it just isn't happening right now. And what business are you in? Yeah, I think, you know, there aren't that many investment banks, right? There aren't that many big wealth management firms. And so I think the use cases where people get acceleration, you know, those will trickle out over the first few years. Certainly first mover advantage, I think, will be real, not just for like that individual use case, but for what it spawns in terms of a way of thinking and additional applications that even we may not have thought of. Cool. This is a use case from L'Oreal that I think is really interesting. So Writer has a feature where we can analyze video and audio. And the recording type here, we've got stuff that comes out of the box. These are customizable as well. And so I pulled, this is, you know, similar to what these folks do. I pulled a Garnier influencer review, and I'm going to call this product and UX research. And depending on the recording type, the type of insights that we pull is really different. So folks use these for all hands, they're using them for executive meetings, they're using them for town halls. We've got a financial services customer that uses them for automatically creating email every time their chief economist speaks that can be sent out to different segments of their audience. In retail, we're really excited about you know, what the scaling of this type of use case means for kind of social community managers really being able to get insights to R&D and kind of the research side of the house. So within CPG companies, we have seen, you know, L'Oreal and others, folks scaling this up. I'm doing this kind of one at a time, but you can create a workflow where you are looking at, you know, dozens or hundreds of these types of conversations to draw out kind of similar insights. So her pain points, low-quality vitamin C serums, you know, overhyped expectations. So a lot of folks are kind of using this type of at-scale analysis for market insights, R&D insights. Any questions on video, audio? Cool. All right. And then the kind of last use case I want to show is around that sales enablement. And in B2B tech, to insurance, to wealth management, the ability to really help folks understand the offering and how we market it and how we sell it are just huge, huge use cases. These are some examples of a security company called Commvault. These are documents that are in Knowledge Graph as well, but I've added them to kind of this session. This kind of interface is used really often in insurance too, comparing policy documents, uploading kind of the specifics of a particular person or claim, asking questions, asking writer to generate insights or answers. And so, but in the B2B context at NVIDIA, Commvault, others, you know, their salespeople can go in and say things like, you know, do we have a stat on downtime? And writer can go through kind of all of their enablement content to kind of pull something out that they can use. And whether this is phrased in a way that you can actually email out to a client directly or phrased as kind of internal content, these are all things that we specify, and this is kind of the level of specifics that we get. Whether you include the PDF of where this came from or an excerpt of it, that is all highly customizable and relevant because, you know, you want to make sure you're giving the folks at the end like just enough information, not too much information. And so, you know, I'm going through hundreds of pieces of content as writer to kind of give my salesperson statistics that they can then use to help support, you know, closing a deal, et cetera. We see a lot of, hey, do we have a reference customer for, I think this is one of their new products. Let's see if I've got anything in there for that. And again, this interface can be built into any other product. So folks have built this into apps they've built on top of Salesforce. This is so great. There are so many like sales enablement kind of 1.0, 2.0 products that are going to be put out of business with things like this, but you know, it just makes it so much easier for the sales force. What do we do for BCG? I know they're one of Commvault's big customers, so let's see if anything comes out here. Anyone building or conceiving of kind of sales enablement type of applications? Yeah.
Presuming that all of the inputs, again, thinking about financial services, are highly regulated, right?
Yep.
How you say certain terms for sales enablement. Is it summarizing or is it merging different documents?
It's merging different documents.
So is there then
Yep.
potential that it would merge two sort of sentences that should never be spoken at the same time?
So the AI guardrails is post-processing. And so if you've got, you know, a situation where you're not allowed to say the word guarantee, that never shows up in the output. And so in financial services, we actually have legal come in and across terminology and snippets, really build kind of the building blocks of that compliance layer for the language, yeah. And this is the case in healthcare as well, you can imagine. How long do you wait for marketing and product content to be reviewed by legal? Over.
Do you have an hour?
Yeah, I know. It's painful. It's really painful. Cool. Other questions, concerns, ideas?
Can I ask a-
Yeah.
You have Figma here.
Yeah.
Jyoti and I were talking earlier because, of course, our designers are like, oh my God, Figma and AI, right? But
Yeah.
so can you tell us at all sort of how writers work with Figma?
Yeah, it's actually not in design. It's with their sales team. So very similar to kind of that type of use case, yeah. Email. In sales, in software, the use cases are really interesting. At UiPath, they were fined because salespeople were using their place in the Gartner quadrant incorrectly. They were fined by Gartner. So now if you are typing an email and you start talking about where UiPath is with Gartner, Writer pops up and is like, this is the one thing that you're allowed to say. You want to say anything else, here's who you contact. Yeah, so we've got a system of extensions, including for Figma, where we can help monitor language. And that's the govern part of our platform. You know, create, analyze, govern, if you go to our website. Govern is both, govern what comes out of AI, but also what comes out of people. Can be trickier sometimes. Okay, well, that is it from me for now. Want everybody to hopefully come to dinner tonight so we can talk a lot more. And Brian will bring us home.
Yeah, just a quick wrap up here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, next slide, it's over here. That good? Okay. So a lot of our clients ask us, you know, how can we get started, right? There's a big investment that could be made. There's lots of things you could do. May talked about a lot of those use cases. We want to prioritize them. Which should you move forward with first? And our philosophy is, yeah, we want you to think big, but start small, move fast, right? You can't do it all at once. You have to start somewhere and get the ball rolling. So we've developed an offer, and this is in partnership with Writer, which we call CXAI. And the idea here is we have a jump start, which starts at about 5 weeks, for us to identify some of the key use cases that you have across your organization, define some of the value that you'd realize out of those use cases, and then build a POC. So we go into the Writer platform, we build out some of the templates, the custom templates if you need those, load into your data, and then demonstrate how the platform can help support those use cases. And so just getting a idea of what that looks like is, you know, that first stage of identifying opportunities is it's discovery, right? So we meet with your team, we're conducting workshops, we'll share some of the art of the possible, some of the things we've talked about today, but specific to your organization, what are other organizations doing to really put that idea in your mind of, hey, what could we do? Or maybe we could do something similar like this, but we want to leverage it in a different way. And then we'll define use cases. And a lot of times we're at like 50 use cases that we get out of this because there's so many ideas that our clients have. And then we'll measure that on, hey, what do we expect the value of that use case to be? What's the impact that it's going to have? What's the complexity of it? If we need to retrain a model, obviously that's not going to happen in 5 weeks. So we want to look at things that we can achieve within this timeline. And that's how we pare it down to 1 or 2 use cases. So we'll say, okay, these are the 2 use cases we want to prove out. They're going to provide immediate value. It's going to showcase the quality of the platform, and it's going to make sure we get started on our journey. So once we do that, then we'll configure the Writer platform, set up an instance for you guys, so you'll have access to the platform and all the capabilities the platform has, but we specialize it to support your use cases. So that's, you know, some of the custom template development and configuration, and then we build out that POC. So demonstrating what the platform can do. It's a proof of concept, really showing how we can leverage the generative AI model to build a better solution. And then we review that with your team, identify what strengths, weaknesses. They don't always work out. Sometimes it's not a great use case. And we say, hey, let's think of something else. Other times it's like, yeah, we can really see the value here. Let's invest further, let's build it out, put it into production, let's scale this across our organization, and then take on similar use cases. And when we think about those use cases, there's usually different solution types. Some of them might be summary, so you might have a lot of different types of documents you want to summarize in different parts of your organization. They can get classified under this summarization, or you have on a search side what's called retrieval augmented generation, where we're interacting with the search and the LLM together. So we would package those. And so you may get to 40 use cases, but they'll probably pare down to like 10 to 12 different solution types. And so once we build out that capability, then you're able to roll that into other solutions. So, there's a backlog development. So as we define the path forward, it's like, how do we prioritize this? Which one of the use cases do we want to move forward in production? How do we assess the remaining use cases? Align that with your current capabilities, and some of that might be from a data side. Do we have the data we need in order to create the experience we want? Are there other integrations that we need to account for? If you're including external sources, which may be part of the case, maybe we need to build out some APIs to make that happen. So with those capabilities, we'll identify, okay, what are the new capabilities we need to build out? And then we'll put that into an execution plan. So the idea here is this is really quick, it's fast, it's meant to be innovative to get you guys moving. Takes about 5 weeks. We're starting this around 50,000, and typically we're leveraging the Writer platform within the Writer environment. So there's no setup on your side. We don't have to get into your server environment and worry about any of the data security pieces on your side. So that helps us get started fast. And we're making investments to get it to that cost and that timeline. So both Writer and Perficient are to make that happen. So it's a great way to get started. We also do fuller, bigger strategies, but we found a lot of our clients are gravitating towards this just to get the ball rolling and show some of the value in their organization. So, any questions on that? All right. That is it. So I'm just going to leave it to Matt to give us directions on for dinner for those of you that are going to join us.
Who's in the mood for a walk?